Holy Week for this year. Because it always rolls, it's always different, it's never the same. And actually, this terrific Tuesday falls on also my wedding anniversary. So today is the day that I'm celebrating 31 years of marital bliss to the very own, the one and only, Dr. Cheryl A. Clarke. And so for all the members of the Comeback Collective Circle, this is a great time. It's a great expression. It's a great possibility. Let me make sure I do one extra thing because I knew I forgot something. Where is it? Oh, there she goes. Let me make sure, make her co-host. So just in case anyone else comes in. We are great and great and great. And so these next 2 weeks, starting with this week's set of episodes that we're doing, and next week, we're going to be dealing with marriage. And why is marriage so important about the dynasty path? Now, remember, when you hear the word marriage, don't get caught up in saying, okay, if you're not married, that means he's not talking to you. No, we recognize that we are in a particular date, a particular day, a particular vibration, a particular thought pattern. That there are people in committed relationships. There are people, you know, if you think about Oprah Winfrey and Stedman, they're not married, but the way they act like a married couple. They just don't have that piece of paper. And if we go back in time, when a man and a woman would come together, there was plenty of parts of the millennials that there was no documentation. There was an acknowledgement of the families that, okay, this young man like this young lady, you know, they decided to come together and, you know, create their own household under the auspices of the Most High. And next thing you know, under all those witnesses, there was a grand feast, there was a grand expression, there was a grand celebration, because these two individuals are embarking upon building a legacy together and joining these two families that may have been on whatever side of the tracks they are. Because love has an ability, and we're not just talking about agape love, but there's storge. Yes, this will be, yes, Mr. Franklin. Yes, this will be a series, and it will definitely be uploaded on YouTube as well. So it's definitely going to be this week and next week, which will be the basis points as we deal with marriage in its, well, in its, not so much in its entirety, but how it aligns with the dynasty path. See, we've been talking about money. We've been talking about how things have to be aligned, how we have to get in the same vein. And it's not so much that everyone has to have the same opinion, the same perspective, because we dealt with that last week when we talk about setting up those family meetings. It's not about everyone has to come in and be military-like, and if you don't think my way, then your way is terrible. No. The greatest thing about possibility is that you have the opportunity to be open to other opinions, because we all have them. It's like buttholes. We all have an opinion. Now, as we shape and debate and have those conversations, we start to recognize that person that you may think don't have a good opinion or good thought may be the person that might end up saving the family. And we have so many, even though it's not a Bible class, but we have so many examples. If you want to go from that spiritual aspect, and especially as a Christian, you know, you have your tenets from the Torah, your Bible, that can give you all those respective ways where family is so important. But marriage is the key. We go back to Genesis when, you know, if you basing it upon that respective story, when God put Adam to sleep, he recognized this dude ain't got nobody to help him. He's going to run around here and till this land and do all these things. So, according to that story, put him at rest, took a rib out, shaped his helpmate, shaped a companion, not to be lesser than. I want you to be clear. I want you to everyone who's on the sound of my voice, be very clear. This is not about being lesser now. She's lesser. No. Even the Most High had enough wisdom to say, wait a minute, this person can't do everything by himself. This entity, this substance, this thing that I've created that is an extension of me should not be by itself. And as we know that human beings are not a asexual species, so we cannot reproduce by ourselves. So us men can't sit there and say, oh, I'm going to wake up one morning and say, I'm going to build a family. No, you're going to need a helpmate. You're going to need someone who's going to be willing to be in participation in that. And then we still, as men, have to honor the fact of the actual physical pain that goes through to bring forth life. And that's in anything in this world, in the marketplace. If you're building a business, if you're building anything that's an entity, that's something that's sustainable in the marketplace, there's growing pains. There's times where it may be down days. There's going to be probably some great up days. But at the same time, you will experience some discomfort. But that does not mean that you won't end up with a blessing at the end of it. So at times we can be positioning ourselves to sometimes set our own selves up for a fall when we start to think that life is supposed to be perfect. Life is not going to have its meandering road, and that opportunity to say, wait a minute, what was the lesson that I was supposed to get from that particular thing that may have occurred? That thing that you may have failed, that thing you may have been tripped on, that thing that God allowed to put in your pathway and say, okay, now what are you going to do with this? Are you going to wallow in it? Are you going to be stuck there? Are you going to be minimizing yourself because now that you fell, as we know by the song by Donnie McClurkin, we fall down and get your behind back up. Get up. Lessons and blessings. All lessons that we experience are supposed to end up turning into blessings. They're supposed to. All lessons are supposed to turn into blessings. There's a reason why you're experiencing that lesson so that it can manifest itself and transform into a blessing. Don't get upset by the things that you've experienced that you were pretty much mandated to learn from. Because what ends up happening is if you don't learn something from it, you're going to end up repeating the course. You're like, why would you say that, Dr. Clarke? Yeah, you're going to repeat it. It's going to come up again. It may not come up the exact same way, but it's going to come up again to say, okay, are you ready to pass this part of your course of life? Because life is a course. You're navigating, you're being propelled, you're being empowered. And as we're about to go into the PowerPoint presentation, I want you to be now, because I'm sorry for cursing, because for me, want is a curse word. I desire for you above all things that you be well-being, not only in what you're doing in the marketplace, but that your soul prosper. And we know that's third John verse 1 and 2. But at the same time, we start to recognize that we must be understandable, that everything that you're going through, there's a purpose behind it. And if you recognize the purpose, then you start to understand why you are going through whatever you're going through. Even this downturn that's happening. Gas prices are crazy. We deal with finances here. We deal with your ontological space here. We understand those things that are probably triggers right now for people, not only in the United States, but globally. This is a global situation now because everyone's affected. And then, from an economic standpoint, when we start to see the macro and the micro start to kick in, and you go in that grocery store and you're wondering why certain prices are starting to get kicked up into another level, another spiel, you start to understand, like, wait a minute, did someone else's decision affect me? Did someone else's decision affect me? And when you start to understand that, you start to respect the lessons that are presented to you because they're there for you to learn from. And then if you learn from them, as I stated earlier, they become a blessing to your life. There's something that you can put in your holster, not like you have a gun, but you put in your holster of life to say, wait a minute, okay, I can tap into that experience to be like, okay, I remember experiencing this, but because I learned this, I'm able to see how to navigate and to deal with it. And now it doesn't feel like something that's just so, oh my God, it's so overwhelming. It's not overwhelming. It's how we perceive, how we shape it. And remember, you are creating your world. God has given you the mandate. God has given you the energy. God has given you the talent. God has given you the opportunity to make a choice. Remember, out of everything, we have the ability to make choices. So there are times we may not like our choices, and we can look to something else outside of ourselves to say that, oh, that's the reason why I made that choice. And it's like, no, I'll be the first one, and especially if you're in one of my coaching programs and stuff like that, as probably Mr. Franklin has experienced over and over again, I said, go get that mirror and go speak to the inner me that's messing you up. No, 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 I'm looking for that person outside of me. No, go get that mirror and go speak to that inner me because we're looking for an enemy. We're looking for an enemy. So go get go get that mirror and deal with that inner me. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, so you mean to tell me if I make better choices, I'll get better results? Now, this has nothing to do with minimizing faith or having a spiritual guidance and having your connection with the Most High. Oh, no, no, no. Don't be dumb. You don't do this thing by yourself. That's being a dumb dumb. But when you recognize they all work in concert together from your ontological spaces, stuff that you're doing and you're mandating yourself to do, and the gifts and talents that you keep repeatedly utilizing, so they're generating a profit, you start to understand how those things can snowball. And then you see some of these people with this, as we've dealt with, the goal here is not to be rich. That's not the goal. We're looking to get people to the wealthy establishment and then ultimately affluent. Rich means that you're just, okay, you have access to resources, as we've dealt with, but it's just quick to give a mini reminder. Rich means you may have a great salary, or you may have access to some resources. But if you're living day to day, as we've proven, that there are people who are out here who have six-figure salaries, still living from paycheck to paycheck, you start to recognize you're good. You're not upper echelon. You may not be middle class. You may be on that cusp of starting to be rich because of your salary. But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're definitely not wealthy and you're definitely not affluent. So as we jump into this, we're going to get into the teaching, because my main thing is not to hold people long. You don't have to be long-winded to be good. It's about getting in there, getting in where we fit in. And as always, I always ask one of the individuals, and this young lady was one of those, along with Dr. Cheryl Clark, who helped, kept pushing me and making sure that Life in the Huddle went from a thought in my head into a book that's now available. Miss Nicole Johnson, can we see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Amen. So, why marriage is the first economy? Ooh, where is Dr. Clark going already? It is the first economy. And if for some people, if you want to substitute that with my partnership is the first economy, yeah, your partnership. See, I'm a young man and the reason why I'm dealing with this is that when I first met Dr. Cheryl, February 1990, and then a couple of weeks later, we decided to say, okay, let's see if we can make this thing a relationship on March 22nd of 1990. And then ultimately, a little bit over 5 years later, I said, you know what? I think I found my good thing, and I'm gonna put a ring on it. And lo and behold, 31 years later, we start to recognize. But everything in those different respective spaces, there was some economic things that was happening. And sometimes we desire not to even allow ourselves to be abreast about those things. We get caught up in the love. We get caught up in those feelings and not recognize, like, wait a minute, how are we going to live? Love is one thing. Love is a tremendous force and vibration. But you can't live off of love. Now, you need love. You need feeling. You need those things that you may emote through, but you can't live or manifest through emotions. That's why when someone makes a decision, regardless if they're in the euphoria of happiness, that's not necessarily a good thing. Or if they're down in the dumps and just upset and just mad at people, mad at themselves, mad at the world or whatever, and I'm gonna make this decision, that's not a good time to make a decision. But when you're resonating in that pocket, well, I say is the middle. It's not that you're not hot. It's not that you're not cold. You're recognizing you are moving in the cool of the day in the way that you're navigating your life. And all of that will stem how you deal with the economies, the multiple economies that you are playing with in this game of life. So no one thinks that we're just minimizing life. No, life is a game. Some people win, and some people definitely are losing. Now you choose where you land in that. So before there is legacy, as we dealt with the past couple of weeks, there is union. Marriage is not just romantic, it is economic, spiritual, and generational. The first place legacy must agree is in the home. I'm going to pause right there. And that is something that we have to bring back up to the surface. That even like the baby boomers and the people who had, they may have had less resources to us or less access to the technological advances that we have access to. But there was something about when you kept your word about something, you kept your word. Now, you didn't say there wasn't no mess that was involved. The stuff could have still ended up being messy at times, but you kept your word. As some of us who can still relate to it, my word is my bond. Back in the day, people, when some of us, some of our forefathers, disrespectfully were not given the opportunity to be educated and they had to sign for something, they had to put an X. But that person down the road knew that that man, whoever your last name is, his X is good. That man said he had to borrow X amount of dollars. He gonna pay you back, and he paid you back. His word was good. That's part of an economy. That's part of the movements and the machinations that make up community. And that's why there's always been such a systemic space to keep us, who look like me and you, for most of you who are part of the Comeback Collective Circle, that makes us that look like each other. Try to always keep us so disparate, not trusting of each other, not recognizing, even in the family dynamic, that, the young lady, she got her stash over here. A homeboy over here, you know what I'm saying? I got my money over here. She ain't know nothing about. Mm-hmm. That goes to the next line. If money divides the marriage, it will fracture the legacy that follows. Think about that. I got my stuff stashed over here. Now, shh. Girls, I was always told to have my own little stuff, have my little rainy day fun. Okay. Like I said last week, or in some of the previous episodes, which you can catch on my YouTube channel at Dr. Gregory Clarke Master Coach, when we quoted the Jay-Z Beyonce song, it says, when the family's divided, am I saying it correctly? Nobody wins when the family's divided. Let me say it correctly. Nobody wins when the family is divided. And if you can divide the family, forget about it. You're jacking up everything. And that leads to all the other different fractures, which can ultimately lead to divorce. And people say, oh, I just need to get rid of it. But sometimes divorce can be a good thing. Because if there's too much misalignment and we're going in this direction, it's like, wait a minute, why are we together? It doesn't work. And it's going to mess you up from an economical standpoint. Yes, it will. It can screw up your dollars in so many ways. And we're not just talking about the responsibilities that are a part of life. So as we continue to flow forward, we're going to go to this next slide. Okay. Once the Zoom share gets out of the way, I'm going to ask Miss Johnson if she can read the title of the slide. I know this is taking a little long. What you in the way for? Thank you. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Ms. Johnson, what is the title of this slide?
I'm waiting for it to clear up on my end. Okay, there we go. The most common marital money conflict.
Money often represents. Now, money often represents, as we can see, those 4 bullet points. We have safety, the need for security. Women need security. I know that forthrightly and establishmently because I've been married to the same woman and been in relationship with her for 36 years. When the money is acting funny, there's a lack of security that's happening. And there are too many times in relationships where when we don't have those pertinent conversations with each other when it comes to and about finance, not just how much you make. Sometimes we got to go a little deeper. What's your credit score? What are you bringing to the table? And same thing for a man. It's not about you bringing 6 to this and 6 to that and 6 inches. Look, that's great. Or the woman saying, my measurements are this, that, and the third. That's excellent. We know what we like to see. We ain't mad at that. Now, beyond that, because of whatever that time happens in those undefiled moments, what are we doing? Because we're not living off of that. So there has to be an understanding what money actually represents in the total dynamics when we're talking about the respective relationships and the conflicts that end up kicking in. So safety is definitely one of those areas. Power. I ain't talking about the show, even though I love it, or the series. I love it. Power, the desire for control. Now, this is very interesting because, yes, we do use money as power. And for many decades, men, there was a time frame, it was like, the woman's going to be the housewife and the man's going to go out there and he's going to make the money and this and the third. And now we're in the stage where sometimes you can be in a committed relationship and the woman's making more than the man. How does that power dynamic now move? If we go back to some of the original stories or some of our, I would say, our guidance, how we should be in a relationship. Man's supposed to be controlling everything, this, that, and the third, this, that, and the third. Which in some ways can be considered messy physics as well. Because if a man finds a wife, he should have found a good thing that should be able to work with him to multiply, not add to him. See, one thing about God always, I can go in the scriptures. God never really talks about addition. And if you can find some place where God talks about addition, I've seen God multiply. Even in the thought when it says, go out and be fruitful and multiply. He said, go out there and add. Okay, add some kids to you. No. He said, go out there and be fruitful and go multiply. See, even in God's economy, we look back at the fact that we can do a multiplication, we're not doing an addition. And you can see that when it says, okay, we send one person out, he can gather 100. But we send two of y'all out, we can gather 1,000. You'd be like, wait, what kind of math is this? You start to recognize we're dealing with exponential multiplication. We're not dealing with addition. Because then some of you start to have the thought, be like, wait a minute, the math ain't mathing. But the math is mathing. Because two people who decide to come together to create a partnership, to create a relationship, to create a commitment level, you start to recognize, instead of having separate power bases, when that synergy kicks in, oh my goodness. People will be nervous just to see you in the room. I love the fact where at times when me and Dr. Cheryl Clark walk into certain rooms, and we don't have to come in there loud and be like, come see us. No. It's a presence. There's something that you generate within your own safe that starts within your inner self. Not what happens outside of you. That generates in your inner self. And that inner self is something that is manifesting. And when you see certain power couples walk into a room, it's like, yo, who they? And especially remember, wealth whispers. We talk about that here all the time here at the circle. Wealth is not loud. Rich can be loud. Rich will come, hey, want to make it. See me here. Okay, that's cute. It's cute. But if you start noticing, as we've broken down in previous episodes, the more and more you start moving towards wealthier and affluent neighborhoods or communities and things of that nature, you don't really hear the music blast. Now, it was cool for me. I'm not going to front. I'm a kid from the Bronx. Now, I remember the time in the 90s and stuff like that, first getting my driver's license and have your little car, regardless of a little Audi 5000, whatever. Yes, I'm dating myself. A little Volvo 264 GL, I'm dating myself. And you have your music blasting, and you playing your music, and you just chilling with your friends and stuff like that, this, that, and the third. Okay, we're learning. You're young. You're experiencing. You're figuring this thing out. But after a while, as you start to mature, you start to recognize that even though you may have the best sound system in your car, it doesn't get cranked all the way to 100. You start to recognize, wait a minute, I think I'm going to respect my neighbors the same way I would desire my neighbors to respect myself. And you say, what does this deal with money? This shows money. This shows a mindset. Because if your mindset ain't right, The money ain't gonna come. Money is the easiest thing to get. We all can get money. You can give someone who's down and out $1 million right now, this very second, and believe you me, within 6 months they will lose that money. And it's not because the $1 million was the problem; they were the problem. Because their mindset, their ability to have a certain level of capacity was not there. So we're not going to blame the money. And like I always said, money is a tool. So we don't deal with the love of money. That's why I have no problem to see people of faith to move towards those areas of being, look, move towards that wealthy status, move towards that affluent status. That has nothing to do with your connection with the Most High. Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, render unto God what belongs to God. And when you're in that philanthropic space and you allow yourself to be that philanthropic individual, you start to recognize, like, yeah, I like to help people. That's what philanthropy is about. So it's not about getting things or getting resources or starting to see numbers stack around you just to say, oh, this is for me. That's a selfish individual. But we've had many previous families and many current families that you see people say, oh, they're getting this and they get millions over here and they did that. And that's charitable. It's very philanthropic. And it leads to the next point about freedom, the path to escape. Sometimes people use money as, okay, I'm getting out the ghetto, or I'm getting out of the projects. I'm getting out. I'm getting out. I'm getting out. Okay, that's good for a fleeting moment. But ultimately, the freedom that you're really looking for is that if you work your talents, work your mindset, work the thing that has been positioned within you to be in the marketplace around, and it starts to generate a return, and your return on investment is wonderful, then that freedom is not about just things or the bills in a wallet. It's about recognizing your responsibilities of bill. And if you're multiplying, okay, how am I building this thing up so I have the baton to pass to someone else? How do I cultivate them like we dealt with last week in the previous episodes? That's why if you missed some of the episodes, I'm happy they're up on YouTube. You can catch up. And worth. The search for validation. And this to me, and that's why I put that as number 4. That could be the worst one because there are times we can be searching for validation. That's why as African Americans, where we still are the number one consumers in this country, that's where certain things systemically are attempting to keep you as. To say that you have to go out there and buy these things so you can be validated. But you start to notice, if you have a discerning eye, or if you're just aware of the circumstances and allow yourself to get out of your circle and your bubble, let's see, like, wait a minute. Some of these people could be worth a couple of $100 million or even billionaires, and you start to sit there like, start to recognize, do they dress like some of these rich people? Just something to think about. All of a sudden, they're talking about multiplying their money, investment over here, angel investing over there, seeing how stuff we dealt with the whole cycle of insurance. That's say all this stuff you can catch up on the YouTube channel. But we started talking about all these things that what the real wealthy and affluent and the rich, when they start getting their sense, now the rich say, oh, I finally got it, and I'm starting to move towards becoming wealthy. It's like, wait a minute. Oh, this is what I'm using these resources for. It's not to show that I have it or to prove to somebody else that I have it. It's technically, who are you looking for the validation from? So, especially in marriages, that worth situation can come into play. And I like the image that I have on the right side just to give a synopsis of it. And sometimes, we can be in that, it's like, I'm not supposed to be in combat with you. We're not combative. This is not something that we're supposed to be here creating an atmosphere where, there's a disagreement. We should be in agreement. And if we're not being equally yoked, not just in the fact of where our direction is, where our spiritual lives are going, stuff like that, but if someone's understanding how money works and the other one is blowing through it like there's no tomorrow, there's going to be a major conflict. Will be a major conflict. So the real problem, couples argue about numbers, but they're really fighting over meanings. Let's say that again. The real problem, couples argue about numbers. So we remove that whole thing. If anyone's getting caught up in the word marriage, we're talking about couples, coupling. Couples argue about numbers, but they're really fighting over meanings. How you moving with money is a meaning. How you may have been taught to move with money is a meaning. And that's why you can be born poor and still end up be successful. Just because the way you started doesn't mean that's the way you have to finish. Some people, sadly, sometimes make those assumptions for themselves. Like, okay, my people will always hear like this, and this is how we're going. Who told you that lie? Matter of fact, why was that cemented in your particular psyche? And all of a sudden, if you start moving upwardly mobile, now all of a sudden you're attempting to be like somebody else, and that's a lie. You're attempting to recognize, wait a minute, I desire from the things that I'm multiplying with to be in better opportunities and situations. Isn't that part of being alive? It's not for you to stay the same, do the same thing. Like I said, there was a point in time when I was young, like I said, young and dumb, and you did certain things that, okay, during that time frame worked because you were still developing. But as you see, look at the word developing. And as you're developing, you start recognizing, like, ooh, I'm not going to do that no more. I don't have to do that anymore. I have those memories. I can remember when I was young. And then when you see the other generations come behind you, now you can be less in less of a judgment. And how's the best way to say it? You're less judgmental to them. It's not that you're not there to direct them, but you can recognize, wait a minute, I was once you. So now there can be a connection because now it's not an elitist form, but now it becomes a space where it's like, if I impart some of these things, like someone took the time to impart these things into me, what happens? I'm paying it forward. Like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I was you. My music was loud, bumping, this, that, and the third. But, after a while, how far are you going to go with that? And yes, it goes back to money because money shows your mindset, or how you navigate with money shows your mindset. So the wisdom key here, you don't resolve money conflict with math. You resolve it with understanding. And what is the understanding? That you start to apply what it is that you learned, regardless of wherever you land in the initial conversations and opportunities to be in agreement around money. We just need to keep stacking our chips. Okay, great. Stacking our chips for what? Are we stacking our chips just so we can go on a vacation? Are we stacking our chips so we can look better than the Joneses? Or are we stacking our chips? Are we thinking about, wait a minute, we're here to build a legacy? So yeah, stacking chips is excellent. But what is your why? Are you doing it just to prove something to someone else? Or are you allowing yourself to be in a space where you're still looking for validation? Any thoughts before we move on to the next slide? Excellent. Ms. Johnson, what does this slide say?